a lot of times people are tempted because doing behavior modification for teaching dogs to not do this sort of outdoors nuisance barking, to use things that seem very easy, like using a shock collar that's activated by the dog barking, or maybe it's activated by the vibration of the dog barking, or a citronella collar. The minimal research that's out there on the citronella collars versus the shock collars shows that citronella collars are probably more effective overall. Not very many projects on that and relatively small numbers in the studies. However, neither one of them are preferred for this type of behavior problem because instead of creating happy, comfortable dogs that see triggers go by and then learn that they're not triggers, in fact, they're super awesome things that are going by, what happens is even if we successfully punish the bark, it is common to still have the animal having the underlying emotions that contribute to growling, snarling, snapping, biting, and fear. So when you punish an animal for having the outward signs that they're uncomfortable, you, in a sense, can make them more dangerous because now there's much less warning that there could be a problem. In addition, we may end up in a situation where a dog who was just barking because dogs normally bark when creatures go by what they perceive as their space. Now we have a situation where we tell them, oh, and also, by the way, not only do you kind of think it's not awesome to have that trigger going by, but it is actually super awful when that trigger goes by because being a normal dog, you're going to be feeling the need to bark. And you might not have much control over the need to bark in that situation. And also, when you do bark, you're going to be really uncomfortable. And in the case of shock, probably painful. Because if it weren't painful and uncomfortable, it wouldn't work. And that's the argument about the citronella collars as well, is that if a citronella collar on a dog is more effective than a shock collar, it is more painful than a shock collar. So the idea that citronella collars are nicer than shock may or may not be true. I think that we could use some more research on that, but I don't want to do it because I don't want to put dogs through that. And I think a lot of veterinary behaviorists face the same concern about actually doing that type of experiment because we have plenty of literature to suggest that putting shock collars and adding aversives like citronella collars to training programs can make dogs more anxious, more irritable, more behaviorally inhibited, show more signs of distress and stress, more conflict-related behaviors in the midst of training and outside of training, and more behaviorally inhibited. And even though I think people, if they were actually really honest, want behaviorally inhibited dogs and that a lot of people actually want their dog to be quiet and hang out on the couch and do nothing until that person decides they want to play ball, once or twice a week. That would be sort of like many people's dream of a dog. That's not normal dog behavior. So what we really want is training programs that honor the relationship we have with this particular species that we share our lives with. And that means that we create behavior modification plans that help them blossom in a way that everybody can deal with. So the other issues with the shock collars and electronic fences that go along with them in some cases, and also the citronella collars, is that these collars can malfunction. So when you're not paying attention, your dog could be getting shocked or getting sprayed at times when it's inappropriate, just from the collar itself not working properly. In addition, even in a quote-unquote properly functioning collar, especially those with microphones, we can run into troubles where dogs are being punished because the microphone is picking up other noises. Maybe it's even a different dog barking, but it's the dog wearing the collar that gets the shock. And applying a punisher or an aversive, something that is unpleasant or painful, unpredictably, it's just an awesome way to make an animal miserable and to trigger behavioral problems.